In this video I will show you how to bake bread. The way I bake bread is called no-knead bread. That means I will not be kneading the dough. Instead, it takes a longer time for the dough to rise on itself. The main four ingredients for bread are water, yeast. Here I use dry yeast. It's about between 1 and 2 grams. Dry yeast works very well, has a long shelf life. I store it in the fridge. With that, all my ingredients have a very long shelf life. Salt. These are here 10 grams of salt. And of course, the most important one, flour. I recommend to start out with a very simple flour to get a feeling what kind of bread you get, and then you can make variations, mix, and get a bit more variety and find out what kind of flour you like best. What's really important in these ingredients is the salt, and the yeast does not have to be super precise. So this is between 1 and 2 grams, this is 10 grams. The mixture of flour and water has to be very precise. So the base recipe is 400 grams of flour to 300 milliliters of water. I will be using 500 grams of flour here because, and that means 375 milliliter of water. The reason is I will be mixing my fairly normal flour with a bit of whole wheat flour. So this is a 100% wheat flour from Korea. That means I don't know much about it. It's plain flour, and I assume it's fairly fine, not whole wheat. So I will be mixing 400 grams of this with 100 grams of rye whole wheat flour to make it a bit more flavorful. So these are the main ingredients I will be using. Let me say a few words about the tools I will be needing. These are primarily a scale to measure the weight of my ingredients very precisely, and a measuring cup for the water. I need a large bowl to mix the dough for mixing, a spatula, and I will use some plastic foil to wrap it up, to seal it overnight. Normally I prepare the dough in the evening, it can rise overnight, and in the morning I start baking. Now the baking itself I will be doing in a cast iron cookot, a Dutch oven. So I use this one from Staub. It's a 23 centimeter oval cookot. Works very well. I can definitely recommend that. If you don't have one and you plan to buy one, make sure it has a metal knob on the lid, so no plastic parts on this, and the inside should be as non-stick as possible. So the Le Creuset cast iron has a smooth surface, and the dough might stick to that. You can still use it, but you need to use a baking paper to separate it during the baking process. And of course, I will be needing an oven that I can heat up to ideally 250 degrees, so fairly hot. And yeah, that's all I need, more or less. Kitchen towel and something to handle the super hot cast iron. So let's measure the remaining ingredients and get the dough ready for rising overnight. I will be measuring 400 grams of this flour. And I add my whole wheat flour. The yeast and the salt I normally just mix in the water. types of flour. They have different colors. You see the rye, whole wheat rye, and the white wheat flour. So I do have to spend some time stirring all this together. It's not kneading. My hands don't get dirty. And it's not really hard work. It takes only a minute or two. Alright, and that's all it takes. And I will cover this up. And that's it for today. And tomorrow morning I will bake it. With that, that's airtight, so the humidity is trapped inside the bowl, and with that I let it rise overnight. So in terms of temperature, I have here a room temperature of nearly 30 degrees, and the water I used was similar temperature. That way it will rise easily at room temperature in a few hours already. If you live in a colder climate, have a low room temperature of around 20 degrees, and maybe you use tap water with only 7 degrees or something, you can either use hot tap water, not too hot, otherwise the yeast will die, with maybe 30-35 degrees. You might also consider placing the bowl in the oven and turn the light on. That might heat up the oven to 35-40 degrees and will help the rising of the dough. So with that, I'm done for tonight, except for the cleanup, and tomorrow morning I will continue. So it has been around 10 hours or so, and that was overnight, and the dough has risen quite nicely. So that's how it looks like now, and I will now get it ready for baking it later. So I use whole wheat flour to get it ready for coating. So the dough is nicely covered. Fold it a couple of times. Whoop. These folds will need some time to grow back together again. And then I let it rest in a kitchen towel that I will also cover with whole wheat flour, so it won't stick onto it later on. So this is how I will let it rest for another maybe 90 minutes or so. I will fold it up. But before I do that, this is also the time when you can add something on the coating. So you can add pumpkin seeds, you can add sunflower seeds, something like that. I personally like to add dried herbs. That gives it a great smell when baking, and also a good taste in the bread later. Alright, so I fold this up and let it sit for another 90 minutes or so. At the same time, I will put the cast iron cookot in the oven and heat it up to 250 degrees or so. So it gets really, really hot and stores all the heat. So once I drop in the bread into the cast iron, it will immediately start baking. Right now the oven and the Dutch oven inside the oven is all heated up very well. And now I will start the baking by putting the dough inside. So here we have the super hot Dutch oven and the dough. And it's time to drop it in. The dough is inside the Dutch oven, and I've cut a little pattern in the top of the dough where it will crack up during the baking. So it's inside the Dutch oven and it's basically already baking. I put it back in the oven. After 30 minutes I will take off the lid and turn down the heat a little bit. So the bread has been baking in the oven for 50 minutes now, and it's time to take it out and let it cool down. Looking nice. Falls out of the Dutch oven easily. Looks good. Sounds good. So it's time to let it cool down for maybe 2 hours or so. It's important that you let it cool down on a grill, something like that, so the moisture can also escape at the bottom. Alright, 2 hours later I will cut it up. So the bread has cooled down in the meantime, and it's time to give it a try. Looks very nice, soft on the inside, nice crust. You can cool down the oven faster than I did now if you want less crust. Let's see how it tastes with a bit of butter. That's very good. Approved. Very good bread. Good luck. Try it. Enjoy your bread.